It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, December 20th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that kind of feels like the Flyers are an episode of Days of Our Lives right now.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh man, we are going to get into the
Like
Kevin
sand
Hayes.
through the hourglass.
Yes, exactly. We're going to get into the Kevin Hayes drama, the Cam Atkinson update, plus a Phantoms update, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, once again, I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here, as always, with the brilliant Russ Cohen, who's on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Flyers. You'll keep up to date on our episodes and Flyers news. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. We're going to have a mailbag on tomorrow's show. So get us your questions. We are going to talk about all of the drama as well as preview tonight's matchup against Columbus, who has some drama of their own continuing. Locked On Flyers is free and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you are listening. So subscribe. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Plus, we're over on YouTube. So subscribe there as well. Russ, we talked a little bit on yesterday's show about Cam Atkinson and the update there that his season could potentially be over. Well, we got official word yesterday that that is indeed the case. He is having season-ending surgery tomorrow, according to the Flyers, and that it's something related to his arm. There's nerve damage there. That
It said neck.
Torts, yeah, neck, arm,
neck area. It is connected
yeah,
because I have a neck
yeah.
issue and it will bother other things in your body. Yeah.
Yeah, so Torts said that, Cam had really tried to come back without surgery and would get up to a certain point and then plateau and not be able to take that final step to be game ready. And so, man, I'm so upset on his behalf.
I'm upset on his behalf. I'm not shocked. Obviously, I felt like this for a while and started voicing it a few days ago that he's not coming back. This just put it to paper. But again, just the Flyers in this whole situation, late to tell, anybody about the IR. It was Cap Friendly that did it. Late to tell us about he's out for the year. These kinds of things fans want to know. And fans of other teams do find out about their players and they find out quicker for whatever reason. But getting it back to the team part, listen, he's not been a part of this team all year. So you can't say that this team is missing Cam Atkinson in a way because we don't know. You don't know what Cam Atkinson is going to be. And now you definitely don't know what he's going to be after next surgery. You have to hope. So that's just something we don't even know how it's going to be.
Yeah, and it's even more upsetting, I think, and sad, frankly, because if you look at that Jake Voracek, Cam Atkinson trade, both players have, potentially career-threatening injuries, and Jake's had that concussion history and is out indefinitely, and it's just heartbreaking for both of them.
It is. It's tough for both. Nobody's going to say they won that trade, and in the end, it's a shame that if it is going to end this way, that both of them left those other franchises. Because I think if those teams knew that, they would have just let them play out the string with their own team. So that's the other part of it. But that's life. That's the way it goes. Both teams were hoping one needed a scorer, one needed an assist guy. They did get that for a season, and that's it. We don't know the rest.
Yeah, as far as the other injuries, Chuck Fletcher gave an update that Bobby Brink was going to see a doctor on December 22nd and could be fully cleared then. We know he's been skating with the Phantoms at practice intermittently. So again, to be determined. Don't want to count anything until we know for sure, but that
Yeah.
seems like a good sign for him at least, and it'll be good to have him in Lehigh Valley on that team.
And let him stay in
Especially.
Lehigh Valley the rest of
Mhm.
the year, as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. Sean Couturier is expected to begin skating soon, as on track, according to Chuck Fletcher. I
Yeah,
can
this
see this
one,
in your eyes. I can see it, but according to them, a late February, early March return, which at some point is like, why bother? But
yeah,
I, I think that, let him heal fully and not rush him back. I mean, I'm being very serious about it, even if it sounds like I'm being flip. But I think that maybe the best thing for him is to just sit out the season, if that's when he'd come
yeah.
back.
In a serious way, yes. I think what you said may be the right thing. But as you were reading it to me, I was thinking about those outlets that were saying, listen, the Spider-Man Broadway play had a few hiccups. They closed for a little bit. They're reopening. Go see it. It's much better. And I was like, no. And that's what my head kept telling me. No, like when you're telling me he's coming back, he's on track. And I'm like, I just don't believe it. I don't mean it won't happen. Right now, based on how everything has gone for him, I can't buy into it. And I almost think, like what you said, it almost might be better if he just sits out the season and doesn't do anything as far as weight training in the off season. Like I think some players now do need to be monitored as far as what their off season training is going to be, because the Flyers have had just too many injuries with what they're saying is just, guys working out. Farabee,
Yeah.
Couturier again, non-contact, right? It's like, so there has to be a way to shore this up a little better.
Yeah. On the upside, Wade Allison is penciled in versus Columbus,
Okay.
and that's good to see.
That's good for the lineup.
Yeah. So hopefully we can get some offense going with him. I've talked about it multiple times that there's just been games recently where like, this game could use a Wade Allison.
Yep.
And so I feel like that's a good thing, and hopefully he can stay healthy at this point.
It's fingers crossed at this point. There's just nothing else you could do.
I think, obviously the other big story is Kevin Hayes and the conflict with Tortorella. And they say there's no conflict, but
There's
sort
a
of is a
conflict.
conflict
You
there.
can't hide it.
No. With Kevin Hayes saying, I don't think I should have been benched, but he's the coach, I'm the player.
Once you say it that way,
yeah,
there's a problem.
Yeah. And, Torts is trying to be cagey about it too. And this is, we've been talking about this for the last couple of days just because of the, benching in the Devils game and then completely scratched in the Rangers game. And so, he'll be back against Columbus, but there's definitely some tension there.
And I'm going to tell you, once you have a former player a year out from playing that should have been scratched a lot himself, and Keith Yandel, who's best buddies with Kevin Hayes, you have to turn off when you were a player, and you have to turn off the fact that this is your best friend, because he comes out and says, well, what about coaches being scratched? And he sounds like an idiot saying that. Yes, it gets everybody to giggle for a minute.
Keith Yandel said that. Just want to make that clear.
Yes. But it gets a giggle out of everybody for a minute. But in the end, you're supposed to be working for a media outlet, and you're bringing your personal friendships into this. And now you're seriously you're throwing a question out there that is an impossibility, but you just thrown it out there for your buddy, so he'll smile when he hears it. I mean, it's ridiculous. And John Tortorella is right in this. Kevin Hayes can say whatever he wants, do whatever he wants, but he is going to get less playing time this season if he keeps playing this way. He has the contract, sure, and he might be untradeable. Now, we'll talk about the other thing in a minute. But in the end, Kevin Hayes is wrong here. Like, he's 100% in the wrong. Again, it's like if you are in English class and your English teacher says, see me after class, and trust me, this has happened to me, and points out why you're getting a D on this, but you could get a C or a B if you do this and this, and they tell you how to fix it. And if you don't fix it, that's on you. It's always on you. Whether you agree with the coach or not, you're getting paid to play the way the coach wants you to play. He's the guy who's in
Yeah.
charge of the team. You're not.
Yep. Well, and that's what he said, but it comes off with a different tone, right?
Right.
This remains to be seen, like how this progresses.
Mhm.
And you alluded to a report from Elliot Friedman about a potential end of season buyout for Kevin Hayes, which I just find to be unrealistic at best, given the cap hit and the fact that if the cap doesn't go up more than $1 million next year, and to have that kind of cap hit, I just don't see it happening.
No, I mean, they would save 5 million next year and then the savings is less over time. The issue is, what are you going to do with that 5 million? Now, if you're telling me I could get, 2 first round picks for that $5 million in space, maybe I entertain it, but you can't. So what are you really going to get? If you're going to get another player, that player is not going to be as good as Kevin Hayes. So honestly, the buyout's not the answer. The answer is the coach
No.
and the player have to find some way of meeting in the middle here. And I think, honestly, I think the player sees that he's doing well points wise and knows that the players like him, but doesn't know the things or isn't aware enough of what he is not doing in games and just needs to get on it. And, I know it's easy to say that, but that's the way it's going to be. I've watched John Tortorella's whole career. If you don't do it, you'll eventually be gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully they can fix all of these issues
I mean, it
moving
is fixable.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we have a lot more to talk about, getting ready for the matchup against Columbus and then getting into the Phantoms report. And we will do that after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer, esports, and of course the NHL. We've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts like ours, you could find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available wherever you get your podcasts. Russ, we haven't even gotten to actually previewing tonight's matchup against Columbus because there's so much going on with
There
the
is.
Flyers. But over in Columbus, they're having some continued injury woes as well. We talked about Jake Voracek, but we just recently saw that Boone Jenner is out with a broken thumb. He's going to be out for about a month right now. Cole Sillinger is day-to-day, so I'm not sure if we're going to see him tonight, and that just really severely limits what Columbus is able to put out there. They have a really solid top line, but below that, there's question marks across the board.
Yeah, no question. I mean, that top line's really good. I mean, line A, you get him on the power play. Ken Johnson, if you give him enough ice time, he's going to hurt you. No question that top line's really good. But honestly, the Flyers match up to them well with talent. Actually, they're healthier than Columbus is. So
Yep.
to me, it's a winnable game. But the big question in this game, this is the one that'll get answered. Because remember, the Flyers didn't go for Johnny Gaudreau, and Torts was like, yeah, I'm kind of glad we didn't because we're not ready for that. Well, right now, the Jackets are in the same situation that the Flyers are in. Let's see if the Jackets are ready for that. If Johnny Gaudreau has like a cat trick kind of game or a big game and they get the win, then it is going to make Flyers fans wonder if they should have gotten Johnny Gaudreau, because again, his contract would run through for them being rebuilt and ready to contend. And that's the debate here, I think.
Yeah, well, especially if you look at the two previous games against Columbus this season, Columbus won both of them. The latter one was in overtime, very heartbreaking for the Flyers on that one. And it's very possible that we could end up with Columbus being, the worst or second worst team in the league this season and sweep the Flyers. I mean, very, very possible,
It is.
which is, depressing in some ways, but that just goes to show you why they play the games. But I think that Gaudreau is definitely this Achilles heel for the Flyers right now because of all of that surrounding it. And, I think that the Flyers are going to have to find a way to score in this one. And Columbus is having goaltender drama this year. And Merzlikins has struggled a little bit. Looks like we might get him. In the game against the Flyers, depending on what happens in last night's game against Dallas, which we don't know the outcome, obviously, yet as we record this. But Tarasov is playing in that one. So whether they'd give him a back-to-back will,
Probably
I
not.
think, depend on how that game goes.
Yeah, I would say probably not because of his age and experience.
Mhm.
Here's the other debatable question, though. The other debatable question is obviously the Flyers knew more than us that it was risky at best that Cam Atkinson would be playing hockey this year. So the question is, when they didn't go and get Johnny Gaudreau, because all this cap space is going to be clear now for the Flyers, and who knows what they're going to do with it. Maybe they'll gain some picks out of it. But in the end, this year's salary would have been more than covered by guys on LTIR with Johnny Gaudreau. And then you could always have cleared the JVR space for next year. He was going to be a free agent anyhow. It does make you wonder whether fitting him in was really going to be that bad after all.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little 2020 hindsight going on there, but I think at the same time, this is something that you could theoretically put in the column of Chuck Fletcher and his group not having a good plan B, right?
Yes.
Where
Like, as they knew,
that
they
it,
had to know the chance of Atkinson playing this year was not great. They had to have known that.
you would think, but I think that we have seen a pattern with this group led by Chuck Fletcher that they're going to think on the positive side of that
I
versus the
guess.
negative side.
Right.
And that's just something we've seen. We saw it with Couturier, we saw it with Ryan Ellis last year. I think that they just think that injuries are going to heal every
Right.
time.
Right.
And
No,
that
that's
just
fair.
doesn't always happen.
No, it doesn't always happen in life.
Yeah. So, we'll see what happens with the Flyers tonight against Columbus. I certainly hope the Flyers can win this one. I think it's almost like a must win from a confidence
I
building
think it is.
perspective.
It's weird that we
Yeah.
would say that. I know people always get triggered when you say something like a must win, but there's not going to be a lot of must wins for the Flyers this year. But I
Mm-mm.
think you're right. To take their temperature and from a mental standpoint, I do think it's a must win.
Yeah, they just need to, level things out a little bit, and a win, I think, would help temper some of this, soap opera drama we've been
Yes.
talking about as well, and just like allow everybody to move on from it a little bit. Um, I do want to talk about a couple of guys on the Phantoms, and this is a good, transition to our Phantoms Tuesday conversation because Kieffer Bellows and Olle Lycksell were sent back down to the Phantoms, and after playing on the Rangers game on Saturday night, played for the Phantoms on Sunday.
Hmm.
And I would say they were exhausted based on their performance. I don't think it was good to put them in that game. I mean, I know they had to, but man, if you look at both of their performances for the Phantoms in other games versus this one, I would say not great.
No, I think that's one where they're just gutting it out for the team. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not precluding anybody from getting called back up. It's just one of those
Right.
things.
Right. Well, they had kind of a mixed bag weekend. They had an overtime win and an overtime loss versus Providence, a back to back, and then lost to Hershey 5-3 on
That's the one that
Sunday.
stings.
It does sting, and I will say, with the Phantom schedule, they have not had a full 3 game in a row weekend like this since near the beginning of the season. It's always been split with a Wednesday,
Right.
Friday, Saturday, or
Right.
something like that. And it showed. Like, you could just see the 3rd period of that game against Hershey, just things went downhill really quick, and
Yeah.
they could not get it
Because it
together.
was close early.
It was, and in fact, I would say that the Phantoms dominated early in that game, pretty handily, but they ran out of gas, and it was very, very clear that that is what happened. So it is disappointing, but they are in 5th in the division right now, which is better. They've gotten enough,
One spot better.
one spot better, which, slow and steady, I guess.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
yeah, there's definitely some really high points to talk about with the Phantoms this week.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be ups and downs on a hockey season. I think development's a little better this year. I'm not ready
Mhm.
to say it's a lot better yet, but at least there's improvement. And again, they have a lot more talent this year. The Flyers have loaded up on veteran talent down there. So that's another thing that sort of makes me say it's not right quite there yet with development, but they're on the right track.
Right, and we saw that obviously continuing with Artem Anisimov, right? 3
Yeah.
goals for the weekend. We know he's, like, kinda too good to be there right
Yeah.
now and what that contract situation is. As of recording, no update if he's gonna get that NHL contract now versus later or not at all, and somebody else is gonna poach him, but,
Yeah, because
I
now there
think
are 2 contracts down. He'll be at
so I
48.
yeah. Yeah. So I think that, the possibilities still definitely there for him. And, as long as he's playing with the Phantoms, he's doing a real good thing. And he is providing that mentor relationship to a lot of the young guys. And they call him grandpa, apparently, which I think is hilarious because I think he's younger than me. But at any rate,
No, but,
um,
so one more interesting thing, I know we talked about it a lot the other day, but this just sort of came in my head. Let's say he stays down in the AHL, does what they wanted him to do with the players, has this great year, but says, "Hey, thanks, but I still want to play in the NHL. I'm going somewhere else." Whereas this year, they have the contract space, they could bring him up, and if he has a great year, why wouldn't you re-sign him? Like, he's the kind of player, like, they have a talent deficit that's gonna go on for a couple of years. He's the perfect kind of
mhm,
plug, but you kind of wonder, is he going to want to stay with the organization if he never gets a shot just because they have
right.
other plans for him? That's the question I guess I have.
Yeah. Well, we have a bunch of other guys to talk about, and we will do that coming up next. Russ, I want to bring up Adam Yinning
Hmm.
because I think that he's a guy that was going to take some time to transition to the North American game. And I feel like he's been a lot more noticeable as
Hmm.
of late on the Phantoms. And he is really, I think, coming into his own right now. He had an amazing play on Friday where he basically knocked 2 guys down on Providence that sprung Garrett Wilson for a shot on goal, which led to the Kieffer Bellows opening goal in that game. Like he started that sequence, and you could see, like, he is a defensive defenseman, but his kind of play is leading to offensive opportunities now. Like he's been able to be the guy that instigates plays. And then he's, scoring a goal. He scored the game tying goal on Friday. It was his first career goal in North America. He had an assist on the teddy bear toss goal on Saturday. And I think that he is, really becoming a key element on this Phantoms team.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, don't look for him to score a lot of goals, but he is a good
No.
defensive defenseman with some snarl and good skating ability. And we talked about him on the show before he played. Like he was probably the least known Flyers prospect out there, and there were people like already saying on Twitter, like, "Are we ever going to see him?" That kind of thing. And well, now you're seeing him, and now you're seeing why they drafted him in the second round, and now you're seeing why they let him develop over there. This is a really good story. He could be up next year. Maybe he, plays third pairing next year, and maybe you have somebody you could plug in there who, can do a little bit more than some of the guys they have there now. I mean, this is a positive development where, again, the only thing that is in the back of my head, and I'm always going to say it when I feel it, is he going to be used the same way in the minors as the Flyers? And this is
Yeah.
where, like, we talk about other organizations matching how the play is. And I forget who the last one was that I heard about. Maybe it was Tampa or whatever, brought up players and they're like instantly plugged in because they run the exact same system. And John Tortorella said that LePerrier didn't have to do that. It does make me kind of wonder, what's going to happen when you have some of these talented players and they're used to one thing. So, we'll see down the road, but I'm very happy for him because I had been keeping track of him. I'd spoken to Shel Samuelson about him and always got good reports.
Yeah, that's really good to hear about what you're hearing from Shel Samuelson. Always trust his opinion on
Yes.
defensemen
Oh,
for the
yeah.
Flyers.
He knows his stuff.
He does, and I think other than that, there's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride with some of these guys. I think with the moving up and down, some guys handle it better than others. I think Kieffer Bellows is actually rolling with it really well. I
Mhm.
think he understands he just got to do what he has to do. He had that goal that I mentioned on Friday and an assist on the game-winning goal in overtime that day. And I think he played well on Sunday relatively. I think he did better than Olle Lycksell did with the bounce back to the Phantoms overall, but I think he's just kind of rolling with it and waiting for his opportunity and just playing his game.
Yeah, I mean, based on what he is doing in the AHL, knowing that it's turbulent up in the NHL, I'm going to try and sign him for next year. I am. He's going to be one of the first guys I turn to and say, "Hey, listen, I know this year wasn't perfect. Maybe he's not even going to catch on with the team this year, but I would like to see him in camp next year. If nothing else, coming off a really good AHL year, he's got a different organization. Maybe things turn out differently for him. Maybe he's a guy that's just going to develop a little bit later. I'd like to see because there's still some tools there that are worth looking at."
Yeah. And, as far as the other prominent prospects go, I think Elliot Denoyer is continuing on his strong path. He scored a shorthanded goal on Friday, which was actually his second shorthanded goal of the season. He had a goal and 2 assists in that back-to-back against Providence. He's the first Phantom to hit 10 goals this season, and he's just, doing what he can and keeping that scoring touch going. His usage is changing from game to game and, what line he's on, and I think he's doing a real good job kinda, doing his best in the chances he's been given.
No, listen, I like the fact that they have somebody who could score on the penalty kill. That's become a big thing in the NHL now because teams are starting to use that as scoring opportunities. Do it in the AHL too. I don't know if Elliot Denoyer is going to get to play the PK when he's with the Flyers someday.
Right.
But right now, to get him in situations where they're goal scoring situations, absolutely. This guy's capable of scoring 30 goals in the AHL some year.
Yeah. Just a quick Tyson Foerster report. He still leads the team in points right now. He had an assist on Friday and 5 shots on goal in that game. And then the rest of the weekend, 5 shots on goal total and didn't get on the scoreboard. But I think his play is still there. He just wasn't getting the right chances
Hmm.
on a lot of this. But I don't think it's anything to worry about for
No,
one weekend.
no, I just want to see a little bit more of a boost. He's made,
Hmm.
a good step forward here. I need to see another step. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Like you said, you can't go weekend to weekend.
Exactly. Upcoming games, Wednesday against Hershey, Friday against Springfield, and then we have the holiday break. Our fun thing is that teddy bear toss goal that was scored by Cooper Marady, and I love the teddy bear toss.
Hmm.
One of my favorite things they do in the AHL. Sometimes
That's
I wish
great.
they would do it in the NHL,
I mean, I don't see why not. It's
too.
it's it's for a good cause and it's good
Yeah.
fan interaction. I think it's great. Uh, again, I would like Cooper Marody to get a chance with the big club because I think John Tortorella would like him. He's a very
I think
smart
so
player.
too. Yeah. Yeah, he's been a little off since, he came back and had, a really great first couple of games, and then
Yeah,
his
yeah.
scoring hasn't quite been there, so it's good to see him get this one in
But he
particular,
could do
but
other things too. He's like
mhm,
a smart player who will never hurt you.
yeah, I agree. I think, if he can balance out his game just a little bit more,
Yeah.
he would get a look for
And a
sure,
note
but
about Lycksell, the other night he had a really good first period. He just didn't. I think he just couldn't keep up the intensity after that. But I felt like he had a really good first period. So I don't think it was a waste having him up there. I think he did prove a little bit.
I think so too. I think he is a guy that can play at the NHL level, so I just hope that he gets some consistent opportunities and then makes the best of it as he plays with the Phantoms. All right, that will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow. We're going to break down the game against Columbus and answer your mailbag questions. So, any of the myriad ways to get in touch with us, please send us your Flyers or hockey or holiday questions that you got. We'll be here to answer them.
Food
You can
takes,
tweet
holiday food takes, sure.
holiday food takes, absolutely. You can tweet us at Locked On Flyers. Send us a message on Instagram at that same handle. Email us lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and their take of the day. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.